Cheng Jiaoshu's father has been kind of understood or found by him, I guess, but like understood enough to us of who he is as a person and potentially who had connections and know of him and can kind of give out some of that information here going forward. Whatever relevance and things that's going to play importance onto, I don't know, but it was a big focal point for whatever reason in the last episode, which also leads us into a really intriguing dinner that we find ourselves at, with Vane here being weird with his cannibalistic tendencies or phrasings that he keeps throwing out there. Learning a little bit about how Jia Fei is clearly somebody who's well aware of who his father was, but plays like he doesn't for some reason, as well as us now having to be people who have to like owe a favor. I actually can't remember what word he used. It was like really important to, and I can't remember. I'm not going to remember something in regards to Vane, so we'll have to see exactly what he means by whatever he said and how that's going to kind of direct us going forward and what they have in store for us to end out here. I hope you enjoy. If you like it all, like and subscribe to the feel free to stick around for the discussion. After the discussion, I'm just going to talk about the arc as a whole as we are at the conclusion of it. Although I do think I've spilled a lot of my thoughts already throughout all the episodes. There's still like a full wrap up, and now that we have the bigger picture, some of the things that I may have said early in that I was feeling a certain way about may have changed or probably didn't, but I can have the full picture, so I feel a little better saying it, you know? So we got all of that now too, if you want to check that out. I hope you guys enjoy. Let's get going though with the 6th episode.
我猜你们只是学生，这么庞大的委托费肯定支付不起。
既然筹不了钱，那就只能用身体来偿还了。
You mean by like being models, or do you mean you're gonna kill us, or?
以前我就有听说过，印度有很多人好这口，咱们不会是碰到真的了吧？
We found someone.
哎，看来我还挺有男性魅力的嘛。
他说他可以。
你这混蛋，说好的搭档呢？
好好展现你的男性魅力。
你
那个，
我 sure as fuck not doing those.
所以提前解释一下。 我明天的拍摄搭档临时被开了，老板只是想抓你们俩。
That's easy. Depends on what the shoot is. Depends on what the shoot is. Give us some specifics.
你确定不叫出师不利？
I mean,
怎么这么悲观？
it's boring. I don't think this was intended.
废话，平时都是我拍别人，哪自己上过场？哎呀，要是出问题了，你老板会不会宰了我们？
放心，咱们要的就是松弛感。
I thought he was gonna say he's not that kind of guy. Bullshit.
Jack,
Are you the partner? You're here?
这人是谁啊？
被开了的模特。
Why is he here?
和你一样，走了个后门呗。要不是你在老板耳边嚼舌根，我能被开掉吗？
Oh, so it's all on you.
是谁偷偷把内部资料拿出去？
Never mind. You deserve
是
to
我
be
一个人
fired.
这么做，要不是有人告密，能被发现？
你是想说，是我举报的你？
搞定了多少金主？
喂，你这是什么意思啊？
打断一下，据我了解，模特这个职业的诉求就是市场利用优势基因人群，促进消费群体多巴胺分泌，从而提升产品销量。说到底，是你情我愿的生意。
Yeah.
如果 Felix 是靠外貌获得的工作机会，只能说明他的外在条件符合了市场，没
Right.
有不同。
I'm not seeing the issue.
至于你，考虑到你没有拿出实质性的证据，你的言论除了能证明你职业道德败坏、业务水平低下、毫无自我思考能力，没有任何其他用处。我劝你，还是不要自取其辱了。
Oh, don't touch our model. Yeah, thank you. I can't be the only one who thinks it's suspicious that every Chinese person that comes here is just a model. Like, that's gotta be something, right?
没必要谢我，替朋友说几句实话罢了。
一会儿就告诉你，什么叫名师出高徒。
See, his mood got lifted, but I thought he was talking about Cheng Jiashi and not him as his friend. So now we get the fan service. This is the enjoy the good and cute times together before everyone's fucking dead.
你们果然很有天赋。
Thank you, boss.
王青，就在那里。
Ah, right.
这地方是
心理诊所，他如今是个心理治疗师，也是这间诊所的负责人。Chris， 材料都帮你填好了，你只需要按时到场就行。
那可真是谢谢你啊。
It's the easy part.
希望
It's
你
the
们
easy part.
能找到心中所求。
谢谢你，喂。还有夏
Framing
斐，
him the
都归
way
有
they
你。
do.
哎，夏斐人呢？
He wasn't with you the whole time.
找到了王清的所在地。
然后呢？我还以为你特地过来，是有更重要的消息要告诉我。
我想
I
终止
expected
我们的合
that.
作，
Why?
我不想再欺骗朋友们了。
No, because the friend thing.
朋友，
They're just saying
要是
that.
你们彼此知道了对方的真面目，还能继续当朋友吗？要是多留在那里一会儿，说不定就能看到有趣的东西了。
什么意思？
电影要开场了。
遇到危险通知我，我会立刻赶来的。
I wonder if it's all being set up by Xiaolu, or if it's also being set up, but Vane's like well aware of what's going on too, and he's setting us up for this.
我留在这儿自然有我的理由。我
Definitely.
倒是也有个疑惑，
I think that
不介意
confirmed
问
it.
问吧。从第一次见面开始，我就很在意，为什么你每次看我的眼神都充满杀意？
我自然有我的理由。
程小石，我等你很久了。怎么了？
What do you mean by long time? You said 10 minutes. We were definitely on time.
压力肯定很大吧？毕竟是黑手党老大的私生子。
啥玩意儿？
父亲去世，你的9个兄弟开始争夺家。
So he just made up a whole ass story for fun. Right.
这种经历我只在电视剧里见过。
哎呀呀！
怎么样？想不想和我聊聊？
No.
我能说啥呀？
实话就好，彼此毫无保留，咨询才能顺利进展，不是吗？
You're hiding things. It's just not gonna work.
90%的人来到这儿都会说这句话。
我是真的
You won't
不一
believe
样
in
治疗
saying
只是
that.
个借口，其实我的真实目的是……
看得出来你有心结，你和你父亲吵架了。
In a way.
刚才描述资料时，虽然大部分时候你看起来眼神游离，充满疑惑，但只有提到父亲的时候，会不自觉地做出反应，愤怒、焦虑、自责。
So I'm just gonna guess not even just observation of that, but general abilities to suspect things like this. Similar to Xiaolu.
知道你们找的人是什么来头吗？传闻说，他只需5分钟就能看透一个人的内心。
Yeah.
众多社会名流甚至警方，都挤破了头想寻求他的帮助。
很久很久以前，在西南部的一片森林里，住着一群小动物。
森林突然燃起了大火，白鸽在森林中奔走，通知火灾的消息。狐狸指挥大象灭火，大象任劳任怨，不惜受伤。兔子们拼命逃窜自保。
可惜，森林还是被烧得一干二净。动物们
So
聚集
even
在
though they
一
all
起
played their part, they still
想要找出
fail.
火灾的真凶，却始终争不出一个答案。
他们用仅剩的1枚金币，雇佣了一个落魄，却又是周边唯一的侦探，也就是你。
动物们向你解释了前因后果，并希望你推理出事件的罪魁祸首。问题来了，
你认为犯人是谁？
有没有可能？有没有可能根本就没有所谓的犯人？
我喜欢这个答案，和我想的一模一样。
因为你想想，西南部本来就是森林火灾的多发地。
I might just like naturally okay.
严谨，但不乏善良。我只认识2个人说出过这个答案，一个是你，另一个是我的老师。要是有机会的话，真希望你们能认识一下。
你说的那个人是陈伟民吗？
为什么你会？
我知道你是谁，王清，你就是10年前那场火灾的幸存者。
Mm. Now you start applying the pressure.
王清，
This will be irrelevant.
真不错，没长残。大姐，有这么对妈说话的吗？
啊？
来，让妈妈亲一个。
我懂了，这里是心理治疗室。
Yeah, now I'm confused. now I'm confused.
幼儿园的时候，你在厕所发现蟑螂，拿着杀虫剂在浴室里狂喷，差点谋杀正在洗澡的亲娘。
Huh?
2年级的时候，你模仿动画片的英雄从楼梯上跳下来，尾骨骨折，从此屁股
Why
板
you
上
know
有个
this?
闪电印记，自己还很得意，炫耀了这个印记半年。3年级的时候，班里文艺汇演，缺了一个人想滑线的女生，于是你自告奋勇。
够了！
Just pulling everything from
人家还
the
认识他，给不给面子啊？
不这么做，你能相信老娘我吗？
这缺根筋的样子，确实是他的做派。
怎么，不来个爱的抱抱？
Something just feels well too far off here.
对不起，小石，这些年让你受委屈了。
这些年你们到底去哪里了？为什么一声不吭就离开？知道我等了你们多久吗？
是我嘱咐王清这么做的。
如果未来你遇见了他，帮我创造一个和他见面的机会。
我想，现在的你应该明白我在说什么。
你的意思是我们有相同的能力？
小石，答应我，不要再继续查你我和你爸的事了。
为什么？
因为我正在按照计划救他，而如果有人参与进来，那么时空会被打乱，
And everything I'm doing will just
我
get
将无法
ruined.
沿着既定的轨迹去避免死亡的发生了。
你的朋友好像遇到了一些麻烦。
I'm gonna need to go back to that. It was a weird and a lot kind of a process that wasn't at all where I was expecting things to go.
一直在想，如何让一件确定的结局彻底改变。如果在此之前再增加一个节点，一个同样是无法改变的节点，那会怎样？既然害怕偏离，那就干脆让偏离发生的更彻底吧。
看来我约错人了，你才是应该去心理咨询的那个。
I
你
should
脑
have
子没
said.
问题吧？
我知道我拦不住你，但可以让你多停留一会儿。现在，你可以进去了。
It's gonna happen, but timing is important.
到时候听你说说原来的结局。
希望我们不会再见面。
不要跟任何人谈及今天的事，一切和这件事有关的变化都会影响我的计划。
你又要留下我一个人了？
你怎么会是一个人呢？你不是还有我们的照相馆吗？那间屋子铭刻的是数不清的人的时间，时间的漫漫长河，由数不清的羁绊编织而成。只要不是孤身一人，即便是漫长的等待，也必定不会无聊。
Boring wasn't the issue here.
就注定会重逢。
说话算话，我会遵守约定，等待你们回来。
还有一件事，
Vane is here. And she's gone.
Hi。Sorry， 打扰到你治疗了。
小石，
Don't move. Give me you know what. Then I will leave you alone.
抱歉，我英语从来就没及格过。
Ooh.
Thank you for your cooperation, sweetie.
看来有人让事情变得更复杂。
There's a weird white hair guy here. Is
小尾鹰。
So you're just capable of.
Bravo！
老板死了。
就走了？不把电影看完？
I feel like the mastermind behind the scenes hasn't showed up yet.
数十分钟后，警方接到报案，有关昏迷前发生的事，程小石说自己记不清了，我也没再追问。
But I'm assuming you
时
know.
间依旧蕴藏着我们无法想象的力量，我只想回到他们身边，陪他们再度过一次新的未来，因为我知道
So it doesn't even matter then.
这是最后一次。
那我就
But why? But why? You don't want to, you can't. Why?
老板的死，你确定没有头绪吗？
抱歉，我真的不知道。
没事没事，我没有逼问你。你们相信这个世界上有超能力吗？读心、隐身、时间倒转，要是那种东西真实存在，出现一种能悄无声息杀人的能力
Visibility.
或许也不奇怪。
这些警方不可能相信吧？
Just go tell
起来
them.
很搞笑吧？这也只是一种假设。不管是多么离奇的真相，我都会追查到底，绝对不会放过犯人。
我已经和某个人做了约定，不会再查了。
该说再见了。虽然不知道是否还能再次相遇，但与你们相处的这段时光，我会记住一辈子的。
到时候咱们照相馆一定热烈欢迎。
I'm assuming we see him
再
going
告诉
into
我
the
个地址
future.
吧。到了后，我绝对立马冲过来。
英雄，不，时光照相馆。
What did he mean by a flash? What did he mean by?
说起来，那会儿从英都回来，你怎么突发奇想把店名改成了时光照相馆？
只要身处同一段时光，我们就注定会重逢。
He's alive, I'm guessing. Well, that's where we come back to. Okay. Jaffe comes to get him. Yeah, probably. So I've been trying to sit here and think of. I feel like I've started a few different discussions, not with this show, but other ones like this before. A structure for the way I want to speak on this. And typically, what we go into is I'll go through the episode, I'll talk about the episode, and then we talk about the season. Usually this is like an arc, like little 6 episodes as a whole, and then we'll kind of move on from there. And I've also discussed at length before my difficulties with maybe putting like a lot of thought power into potential theorization and other things with final episodes of things, like before new seasons and stuff come out, because it's like all of that stuff that I'm going to openly discuss and like speak on goes into nothing for like 2 or 3 years, and then it's just like it doesn't feel worth my time. You know what I mean? Like I just don't have like the desire typically to do so. And this is a situation I kind of feel similar to that. We will discuss things at a certain point, but the way some of the fandom goes, when they go really in depth with a bunch of things and note a bunch of things, I'd appreciate it if you guys do that for me, and I'd love to read it. But me going into that, probably not going to happen here. So this is difficult because a lot of the stuff I want to say that occurs throughout this episode is relevant to the bigger picture of everything that we will speak on. That would make that section feel kind of lackluster almost. So I think we're going to structure this in a way where I'm just going to do what we would do in that section, and then we'll maybe try and go a little more in depth with each of the things that I typically skim over with it. And then we'll get the episode like kind of like skip through as we go through it at a certain point, after I feel like I've spoken on the season like as a whole enough, and like gone into enough of like questions or things I liked or things I didn't like and stuff, like, and after I think we really go into that, I can transition into it. So sound good, hopefully. I think that's how we're gonna handle it. So I will say, this went entirely different than I was fully expecting. An appearance from the mom wasn't on my cards. Honestly, the entirety of this arc was not really in my cards for when it came to like the parents and like their relevance and stuff. And as that started to manifest, like I didn't really gravitate towards having much interest or care for it, which is kind of unfortunate, but it is what it is. But interesting, I think, that we do go that route, and then being able to implement like another person with this ability being her and what she's kind of doing to potentially showcasing another ability and things that Luguang has, and being able to kind of throw you for a loop where I think most people were under the assumption Chang Jiaxi was going to be the one dead by the end of this. I actually said that, I think, in the first episode, and then I think in the second episode I said I don't think he was going to, but I did think Jia Fei was going to, and he seems to get either arrested or gone missing or something happened at the end. I don't know, I can't read the language and I didn't get translated, so I have no idea. So I do want to give my praisal for something I've been largely critical of with the entire of this arc, really not loving any of the episodes coming out of them, and while this one I think is better, I still don't love it, and I think that's just because it copies a formula that I'm not a fan of, which is build up, explosion of answers here, and that's kind of it. And that's how I felt season 2 went, which was one of my big issues when it came to the overall pacing of it, and the issues with it, which I think are very relevant and show themselves even stronger throughout this season. It's everything that we do gets built up to this one final moment that then explodes and gives you all the answers and the things, but then does it really? Because it doesn't really answer anything. It just shows you some stuff and it leaves you to be like, oh, what's that, and theorize on everything, and then put you in a position where now you have to wait till a future season to be able to then figure things out, and then have more stuff kind of explained. And it's just, I don't have the word for it, but it's just, I don't like it. I don't like when it does that. I'm not a fan of that. It doesn't do a thing to kind of build hype or excitement for me. And it more so just feels, especially in the fashion that they chose to do with like a prequel, kind of not really prequel, but kind of prequel thing, where we also have like this other thing that happened in the past that we're going into, but we're in a different timeline and stuff, like weird thing that's more continuation kind of what we're already on, and the inability to express the things that they kind of want to within the world itself in like a format, I think, that really makes a lot of sense. Like most of, I would argue, you can argue with me if you're wrong, but like 95% of the things presented within this were never spoken of, or really things that were like important or relevant at any point throughout the first 2 seasons. So it's different when there's things that have been kind of hinted towards and talked about and presented in certain ways that then you get to see kind of revealed or unfolded within this. That is kind of a cool format for you to do it. This doesn't necessarily do that, in my opinion. I think it just takes everything that it's like, we have to have a reason to, it takes, like, in my mind, this is how I'm imagining the story itself got kind of built out. They created like these backstories and these things that kind of have happened that we can refer back to at some other point. And then as they got to drawing up and writing out the ideas of where they were headed and what was going to occur within the 3rd season, it kind of hits them at the same time of, we don't have a way to fully explain this or to naturally kind of put in to like this section of the story within this season, a lot of this stuff to explain it. So what we're going to do is we're going to separate all of that entirely to then give all of that context that is much needed for going into this, that we can go like 0 to 100 really quick if we want to, because we don't have to explain any of that because it was all kind of like put into it, which in a way makes me kind of respect that, because sometimes that happens where you get like really annoyed and stories do like flashbacks and like things like that, and it's just like you're ruining pacing of a lot of the stuff. So typically I would be kind of okay with that, but it's also one of those things that we can't even necessarily say it would be something similar due to the fact that we don't have this 3rd season yet. So we have to see the way that they kind of like conduct it and they plan to approach that, you know. It's a weird thing, because while I do, like I said, praise it for that, at the same time, I don't think like that they really revealed or did things in like a stronger, meaningful fashion for it to warrant 6 episodes. And maybe that's more of my complaint and where it comes from. And it's one of these, this is me more so just trying to talk myself through it. I don't have like I'm not set on like, this is why I feel this way, if that makes sense. Like in the moment, I'm kind of feeling certain ways, but I think reflecting on it, getting more context and things might alter that. I'm stuck right now, I think is more so where I'm getting at. So I'm trying to piece this stuff together to figure out why maybe I necessarily feel how I do. And I think the 6 episode thing might be the issue too. Because the big issue with this is the pacing is awful. Well, that's the weird thing, right? So the pacing's not good for start to finish, how they kind of like slowly dripped certain things in, if that makes sense, to like build up to where we are. I don't think it's strong. I think it's really, really poor, actually. However, I do think in the general format of we have to build from beginning moment to moment that all characters kind of interact for like the first time and like collide at a certain point, it does kind of what it needs to. So it's like a weird thing of like it needs to be paced in a certain way it is, but it doesn't at the same time, which is where my complaint is, because you could realistically, they could have given us this episode and maybe like 5 extra minutes of context, maybe 10 extra minutes. We might have needed more of an extended episode, but not that much more. So fuck it, I'll give it 2 episodes. I'll tell you, I needed one more episode before this, and I needed this one. One episode before this that mashed everything up from the first 5, and then this episode, and I think I wouldn't really feel as negative as I do right now. I actually think that's how I would feel. They didn't do anything strong, which was one of my complaints, and I've mentioned it in comments and stuff, talking to a few of you who feel kind of similar after each episode that was occurring. But it's like the emotional, like high stakes kind of moments and things that we get from the different episodes up to this point, especially episode 1, as it went into like 2 stories and tried to almost feel like it was returning itself to form of where season 1 kind of went, and the things that I think a lot of people actually really started to fall in love with and love about the series, was just weak. Like they're the weakest individual stories like that we've had to date within it. The emotional value was really kind of lacking. The overall writing on them just didn't feel very strong or have any substance really to grab onto either. And all it did is provide more of like a setting the tone, which doesn't even work because the rest of the season is not like that. So it doesn't really do that. It sets the tone in the sense of this is where we are in time, and this is kind of like the relationship and where we're going to probably head, which doesn't even happen because we don't even come to this location until episode 3. So it doesn't even matter. So that's not even a thing. But it tries to establish that, which is something that entirely could have been done in episode 2 itself. It's weird, or maybe they came in episode 2, I can't remember, but it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day it just could have been established in 5 minutes at most. and I think we would have had the same impact as we did, and it leaves everything else that we get invested into, all these new characters that get introduced. Jaffe, there's nothing really strong outside of the fact that he is revealed to be somebody who's like working hard to pay for these things on his own, for trying to not burden those around him, like his family, his mom, and everybody that he's talking to, right? It's like, okay, sweet guy, like you wanna feel for him in some way, but like what does it do outside of that? We don't really develop him much or give much like mystery or real intrigue to him as a character, outside of the fact that we hint towards him potentially being in the background in episode 5, and having some sort of connection to Ching Jeshi's father. And where else do we go? Vane, what does he really bring to the table? We pose him as some sort of threat. That's kind of the vibe that they're trying to give him off, that we have to be cautious and he might be into something. Lots of theories and things kind of get formed directly off of him, of maybe having something to do with the powers or what his own ability and everything itself kind of was, just for him to ultimately be like pretty weak throughout the entire series. He doesn't do much every time he's on screen. While he has some sort of presence that you're like intrigued in, it's just because of the lack of knowing of him, to the point that he just kind of crumbles and doesn't really do anything interesting, especially in the fight that he gets towards the end, until we get to see his sudden revival come at the end of the end cutscene, which is like cool, I guess, but like it kind of is just silly in my mind. Like it actually, when it came up, I wasn't like holy fuck, like, or like thrilled or excited. Like personally, I saw it and I was just like, all right, here comes this bullshit. Like you could already tell they were leaving a little bit to like leave you on some sort of cliffhanger, as if the show doesn't try and do that every episode, that most of them haven't really amounted into too much, and get really diffused as soon as the next episode kind of begins, which is lackluster. I mean, that's literally what happens here. We end episode 5 with this big thing of like, oh, what the hell could he mean? What exactly is like on his mind? What's going on? And it's just this like cute thing that they try and do with all the characters modeling together. Like it doesn't amount to things, you know? So we get something similar to that, but it more so just explains why we are in a situation of where we are, maybe as a way to explain his own ability, but at the same time, and I guess explain the ability potentially of Chang Jiaxi's mother, but at the same time doesn't really do much to further him as like a intriguing character in any sort of way, or even really her. And it makes that entire altercation feel even more rushed and kind of just flat in general, which is pretty unfortunate to me. I think Chang Jiaxi undergoes potentially really nothing here. I think he doesn't change or grow in any sort of way or provide any sort of like special insight or do anything as a character that I think I would have potentially liked to see him get on a development sort of end, or just being able to like understand the potential of where he's at. The only thing he really gets is the potential promise that he's maybe have been keeping up to this point, which is nice to know that maybe you can trust him with a little bit more than you thought. But even then, it's like you got 5 episodes of bullshit out of it, so it like doesn't do anything. Zhao Lu, he is actually interesting to me, weirdly enough. I think a lot of people probably will disagree with this, but I do think he's actually probably the most interesting person, probably well, behind Lu Guang within this whole scenario here. He was very like not on screen at a lot of moments, and every moment it made you question like why he had this overconfidence like to him. And even at the end, with the potential knowledge and understanding of where things are and where they're headed, is really just intriguing in general to me. He feels like the straight parallel to what we get to see with Lu Guang acting as though he's like this sort of puppet master when it came to controlling the altercation between Chang Jiaxi's mother and Vane, which is interesting, like, because that's what I get out of Zhao Lu. I think he is actually the guy who's like operating within something like that. Which makes me really like intrigued. I don't know. There's just something badass about him sitting there watching the movie and just like being aware fully of like what exactly is going on. And he's likely the one, to my understanding, that comes and unzips Vane at the end of the episode too. And he's been kind of having all these guys like in the palms of his hands, right? He's literally like controlling and altering every single like action and move that these people make for whatever that reason is. I mean, his own appearance and stuff was something that came as a shock to Lu Guang at a certain point too. So I do think they did a good job at growing some sort of like intrigue towards him potentially, but it is still lacking, as I think him being more relevant throughout this would have been kind of more ideal. And then the other big character is Lu Guang, of course, which I think they do a nice job of. While I do wish maybe that there was a little bit more to him, I do like the idea of like everything kind of felt narrated in a way and directed by the things that he was doing. Whereas I feel like the previous seasons, even though that technically is the case because he's the one like the voice in the head and everything who can like see past and present and stuff, so like he's kind of relevant and really important because of that. I do think this season really highlighted something that was like kind of special with it, where it really felt like we were going through and understanding him on like a different level of trying to like see all the like knots and the things that he's like untangling and the different paths and the stuff that he's going down. And I almost felt like we were almost in his own position throughout the entirety of this, of like wondering why we were going down certain paths or what going down certain ones would kind of like entail here, which was interesting to me. And I think that they did a nice job, and especially being able to unveil some extra stuff that we learn about him, which continues on with the general idea already that he's a lot more is going on in his mind and a lot more he's capable of and knows than he's really letting on. So it makes you want to be interested in him and his own identity and the stuff that he's seen and gone through already up to this point, while not being able to know exactly all the loops that he's been through. We can make estimates, of course, but not knowing exactly how many times he's seen certain things and gone through certain things and what exactly he's had to see within each of these lines and stuff too. And knowing that he's like keeping all the stuff within him, I think is just, it's fun in general. It already was up to this point, and I think being able to unfold it throughout these just did more to highlight him as a character and intrigue on him than it did for anything else within the story. Lastly, I guess we get Ching Jiaxi's like parents are like probably the other big characters that get develop throughout this or like are relevant in any point. His dad just, it didn't do anything for me. I had no interest in seeing him on screen. It didn't, the interactions wasn't like too strong outside of the vocal performances that came from the voice actress in that episode, episode 5, and the yelling like kind of at him, and then the bleeding of like lines coming through from the thoughts that Chang Joshi was probably like likely having at that time, as opposed to saying the things that he was directed from, say, like Lu Guang, about his own feelings and stuff towards his own family. But then that, like, it's a complete opposite, because it's the saying all this stuff, immediately snapping, immediately not being okay with the fact that like he never made that effort to reach out or go back, or like he's just trying to replace his son or like do something like that. And then the moment you introduce his mother, everything's just like kind of goofy and fun and happy. It's like a complete tonal shift that is like kind of the opposite of what you would almost expect somebody coming encounter with this person and then immediately buying into the thing that she's saying, which makes sense because he has his own ability and stuff that he has to kind of deal with anyways, and he understands the way that that it would work in some sort of way. But it's still like, it's weird just from the sense of like he didn't question at all like why you're dedicating your entire life to this and why you up and abandoned me as a result of it, which I think we can chalk down simply to the fact that if she's able to alter the situation that actually occurs in the death of him, then they can go back to like a happy life and thing when it comes to Chingjoshi. But like that doesn't really make sense because they left before any of that kind of occurred, so where is like the connection on that? Doesn't really add up. So like forgiveness based on directly that doesn't really align with me, and it's just the random likeness that makes it feel ass pulley, which it's like it has some to it that I don't want to say it is, but like it really does, where you're just throwing another person in here who just happens to have this ability, who just happens to be doing this other thing of some sort of like importance or relevance within the final episode of something that's what are we now, 30 episodes plus in. Like it just, I don't know, you know, like I don't know how to feel about that. It's not like this has been hinted at since the beginning. It's not like this was like something that was strongly indicated that there could be potential here from like episode 1 or 2 or something. Like the only like thing that we can really grab onto from this is the idea that he's like not actively seeking out his own parents throughout this, and he has been seeking out that sort of potential relationship and stuff with them, but like not actually like looking to like seek them out and find them or look for them at any point throughout the first 2 seasons. But it's relevant throughout this one because after he comes to that sort of conclusion and understanding of the things he learns, it no longer is relevant throughout, you know, the remainder of the story from what we get. And he kind of just like comes to acceptance and understanding of what she's potentially doing and how things are working here. But even then it like alters entirely with her saying like don't get involved, don't do anything, don't like expose any of this sort of stuff. But it's like I get that, but at the same time, wouldn't you kind of like argue that Lu Guang going out of his way and doing some like crazy shit too while he's not fully aware that's going on? Like wouldn't you argue, not even that actually, like just think back to all the times that he was like panicking in like different moments, especially in like season 1 when he's in like these stories and he's potentially altering things by him just acting like an idiot within them, right? And that's where like we get this reputation and stuff that he's kind of like Lu Guang kind of knows him for and we know him for, right? Like all these things that he's changing. Don't you think you would have like tried to protect that a little bit more and not alter these things to potentially cause any like a harm to what she's out here trying to do either? Like it just feels a little like it doesn't feel on with me. It doesn't feel like it properly is like worked or was something that was thought through from the beginning to me. It just, I don't know. I just don't know how to feel about it. And I think like it was probably visible within my own reaction. There's another series that does it. I'm not going to say which one or spoil or anything because it happens like really, really far into it that I watched. And me and one of my buddies kind of joke around about it all the time about just like the way that they portrayed like a certain person or like brought this character up. It was a mom in the situation too, and they were like in the background, like they were basically like dead and like off screen like this entire series, to just like way down the line, like they just show up and they're like, actually this person was like, and they like give this full backstory, and it's like that was not planned from the you did not mean to do that from the beginning, because you would have built them different, you would have talked about them different. It just felt like you were just like throwing something else on there to add another layer to it, right? Which is like a area of potential concern that comes in too, where we're already dealing with one thing of potential jumping timelines and doing stuff can get messy enough from a general sense of like keeping things straight, keeping your story straight, not having plot holes and stuff, right? And then now potentially having all these other characters who have abilities and can do things, who might know things, Jalo being potentially one of them too, you find yourself in another scenario where we're like, okay, well, things could get really fucking messy now. And then now to have another person who potentially can like still do all these things, it's like there's a point where this could get really, really bad, and we're entering that territory, which leaves me heavily concerned for what they're even intending and what's going to happen a little bit going forward within the third season there. Well, I think I could like grab onto and go into detail some of these other things too about my feelings towards the season. Well, I keep struggling to know if to call it a season or arc here. I think like the biggest way I can just kind of sum it up is like what I commented on response to one of you guys last episode was everything that this season did just highlighted the things I liked so much more in the first season, and then also highlighted the things I liked in the second season, but also highlighted the things I disliked in the second season in comparison to the first, right? Like it highlights it to a higher extent that the magic that was there, the formula, the things that they had that was like really excellent, that was like gripping and just like dragged me in, that slightly felt like it was missing for very specific reasons throughout season 2, but was still pretty strong from there, felt vanished entirely throughout every episode of this. Which also could fully come down to the idea that we know where this kind of is within a timeline, to understand that like nothing like really bad's gonna happen, you know, like to our main characters, the ones we care for. And because in my opinion they did a really poor job at building up or drawing a connection in some sort of way to any of the other characters throughout this arc, it just like there was no like the stakes were not high throughout the entirety of this. Like they just weren't. And I think that potentially is one of the biggest reasons as to why it just doesn't work. It's potential. I mean, lots of other things too. The storytelling itself felt pretty lackluster. The pacing being entirely off. The animation itself being a little bit weaker in comparison to. I mean, the fight scene throughout this last episode was probably the weakest one that we've had in every part of the season so far, or all 3 seasons up to this point. Like, and considering this is your big climax finale moment, you would assume it would have been a little stronger than it actually was too. It just, I don't know, felt a little weak. It felt a little flat. It's unfortunate. We'll go through the episode a bit just so there's specific things that I kind of want to mention and talk about. They skip OP, which I will mention was something that grew on me. Didn't necessarily love it at the beginning. The other ones gripped me like immediately, and I loved the other 2 songs, but this one didn't just really do that. But I do think as we got further and further and I started really liking it more, and especially like the visuals and stuff to kind of accompany it, so wasn't necessarily mad about any of that. And we get this too. It's like I said before, high stakes moment, potentially like, right, like you're building up this high tension thing to end off the episode. Here's your huge cliffhanger. Let's just kind of revert it into nothing. And it's not like that's an issue, right? That's not because plenty of series do that, plenty of shows do that. The problem is we do that every episode where it's like, holy shit, this is going to happen. And then the next episode immediately just starts off with like a joke, and like we just flip it in an entire different way, you know? Like everyone did it. It gets repetitive at a point that like having cliffhangers to have cliffhangers just for the sake of having them isn't necessarily a great thing, and isn't necessarily something that you need to like frame every episode around to make work, which is what they did in season 2, which was one of my biggest issues with my complaints for, because it ruined the pacing by half the time. The things that happen at the end of say episode 5 didn't occur till 19 minutes into episode 6. Like it just didn't make sense. They were reordering things and doing them for that purpose, and it just like at a certain point it starts losing its charm because of the way that you treat it. So it's pretty, I don't know, it's unfortunate the way they do that. We set up an entire scenario here where we can end up having this. We have Lu Guang end up going out of his way and considering these guys to be his friends, or Zhao Fei to be his friend. I didn't get that reading. I still don't. I still think he was just talking about protecting Cheng Jiaxi here, but even if he wasn't, then it works. But even if he was, like, it still works as Zhao Fei, like just taking it to be that way and wanting to just be like a better person, or not like potentially put these people at risk, or like do these things and like go behind their back and stuff too. So it works regardless. But we meet this other guy who just like doesn't really have any strong grounds to stand on, is just mad to be mad. Once again, another random Chinese dude being drawn in here, which just doesn't make sense, because the immersion gets like ruined immediately when the other guy comes in and he just starts speaking English, because it's like, oh yeah, we are here. It's like, why are all these models and stuff just randomly, like it just just, I don't know. It's a weird scenario, but I like the way that he steps in immediately, of course, clears up, as classic as that can be. These scenes are cute. I like them, and it's a fun little thing to give you like the calm before the storm type of thing, you know, like before we flip to like some crazy shit actually about to go down and about to occur. And of course, look who sets this whole thing up, right? This is where my general thoughts and ideas of Jaffe kind of, not Jaffe, Jalou being somebody who is like setting all this stuff up and pulling all the strings from like behind the scenes here is just through my understanding of like what his relationship with all these other guys kind of are. And it's simply like he's getting all the information he needs directly back from Jaffe here. He set things up so Vayne would go out of his way and kind of potentially point them in this direction, and he can lurk in the shadows and not necessarily need to show himself to these people. His decision to show them and show his relationship potentially at the beginning of like when they were in the airport was weird, but maybe more for that at a future point. But we set it up so we can go meet Chris, the counselor here. Want to end our cooperation because of my friends. If you stayed for a bit longer, you would have seen something good, right? Movie's just about to start. Like, you're aware of where this is going. You're aware of what is about to happen. You're pulling all the strings here. And he runs to go do this. You have such a murderous intent in your eyes. And the more we go through this, the less I'm feeling like Vayne is kind of aware of the future and the things that are happening. My initial feelings through like the text he got and the flight confirmation and him being here and stuff is more so kind of just like reading to me like Jalou's aware of what's occurring and he's setting things up kind of more in advance and putting the pawns in place, you know? That's kind of how I'm feeling with that. So we ended up going through this. This baited me a bit. I thought that we were getting like direct, like somebody else has this ability here, just to find out that it was someone else kind of coming in and taking over. Goofy and cute interaction though, and I like the way that she's able to like directly like read through it. It felt really weird, and it was difficult for me to like still, even now, to get around to the idea that his mom just randomly is going to show up and be a part of this and like actively working towards something when it hasn't necessarily been too crazy up to this point is weird. We get a story that has like relevance and connection directly to a bunch of the characters and stuff. Similar way that they kind of told other stories throughout from the beginning, and also in season 2 that they did too. So they usually do typically a good job. It's an interesting one, and I like the idea that we play the parallel between like having probably the same answer between Lu Guang and like Vayne with their own lines of thinking versus the line of thinking where like Shin Jiaxi's at, like he's like the light and the clarity within it of trying to like alleviate anybody from any pain or like difficulties that are actually occurring, and blame being directly placed on them, while Lu Guang probably saw it directly different and pinpointed exactly who the like person to put all the blame on was, or to like kind of like as a group kind of hold on and take all of it. I don't know exactly what he said. I would be curious. But it is interesting. Curious if your friend would think the same. Probably not. I'm assuming they're on completely different pages. You know who this person is, and then that's when she goes out of her way to take the photo, right? She was waiting for the name drop, and the moment that happened, the promise that I made would come true. Let me get this image, probably send it to this person, or maybe it was just like in time this happens and they're aware. I don't know, like weird stuff, but probably sends it to her, confirming alive and everything too, and the status of that. Allow her to swap in as quick as she could to do what she needs to let her know about what, or let him know exactly about what's occurring, and to kind of just like stay away. Don't get involved. Don't let any of it kind of happen. This is where things just get fucking weird. They start feeling all weird when we're in this conversation. The immediate, like, he doesn't fully just like get onto it immediately. Why did you leave without saying anything? I was waiting. Can you explain what's going on? And then immediately just buying into it directly. Coming from to make more sense about the power being something through her as opposed to the dad and stuff, which definitely makes more sense in this sort of scenario than just like the weird manifestation type of thing that they were kind of building potentially towards. You know about all these things when one small little thing actually occurs. And Lu Guang poses like some really intriguing stuff. And this is what he said at the last episode. Maybe we just got to get fucking freaky with it. Like we got to just do some weird shit that you never really would expect. And typically while he's on this one sort of path, maybe if we can't overwrite like this one death by doing something, maybe all that stuff can get canceled out in some sort of way by allowing another one potentially to occur, by getting weird with the things that we're doing and just getting out there. What if we stop you before you can get to us, right? Like what what if we do something along those lines, potentially setting up the death of, or believed death of Vayne that we end up getting here. He spins around, immediately decides to come here and check up on them. And here he comes to take them out. Give me you know what. We don't know the significance. We don't know the importance of this, right? Like, this would be a way better or more intriguing scenario, in my opinion, if we knew what she was hiding, if we understood what was in it, if we understood the significance or importance of it. Things potentially that get revealed at a later date, but up to this point, we still have no idea at all. I don't know. Like, it didn't do anything for me, because it's like, oh shit, he's leaving with something that's like really important. Instead, it's like, what even is that? So like, energy just down as a result of this. Kind of stiff, not the strongest that they've ever really done. She ends up taking, I thought it was just a postcard at first. Like, I thought it was going to be a similar thing to what he ends up finding that his like dad kind of gave him, but instead it's being very, very different. He ends up taking it. It's clearly something important. It's clearly something that he can't have. Potentially is something that Lu Guang himself knows, that if he gets a hold of this, it means really bad things going into the future. So if we kind of prohibit that from occurring, this will be good. So what he does is he triggers something that I don't even know if it was possible, directly just being, so like, this is where things get weird, right? So the mom has the ability to kind of come in and do this. She has some sort of ability that I don't know what exactly it is. Like, she has something. I don't know exactly what it is, but she can do something to other people that Lu Guang directly probably ends up utilizing from her. And let's see, that's where it's like, it's weird. That's where I can't fully grab onto the idea of, because my assumption is Lu Guang goes in and he has another thing that he's not really telling anybody that allows him to like kind of go into this person and then directly control them, which would kind of track to the things that he's been doing while we believe he can only see before and after of these things, and he just gets kind of like stuck in the head of the other person. His ability to kind of like connect to these people and be like live within them in a sort of way, I wouldn't doubt the fact that he does have something else to like kind of manifest the things they're doing. So I don't know if this is directly his own ability of controlling it, or it's an awareness of her and what the thing is that she has or whatever, but at this time I felt like she already flashed out. I thought that they kind of tried to indicate that, and we're also under the full-on assumption that this is Lu Guang still within this due to the change in the color of the eyes, going to blue there. So I'm just gonna make that guess. I don't fully know, but I'm just gonna make that guess. We'll have to end up seeing, but like, that's why this whole scene is kind of weird. I'll probably have to rewatch it and maybe have another idea, but if I assumed, and if the mom was in it and it's not like an override, it's just an override of everybody and everything, even though she's still kind of in it, it would lead me more under the assumption of, so it's like he goes in directly and he can cause these people to feel this sort of pain and stuff as he overtakes it and is able to like kind of shut him down and end up killing him, which is like the big drastic change in the shift in the things that he's trying to make occur here. Cool, but what is that? I don't know what that is. It just him assuming that he's able to shut this down, but Vayne has something within himself already that allows him to stay alive and not be able to be killed kind of in these situations? I don't know. But it's through the importance, at least, I think, which is the important thing that we were trying to prohibit him from getting possession and holding of this, and knowing that she wouldn't be able to actually control or do any of that stuff on her own. He had to kind of take matters into his own hand to kind of change the course of everything that were to occur. But then it's like when he says, see, so that's how it is. It's like, it leads me to believe he knows more than he does, but like at the same time, I don't really know. Not going to finish. Don't celebrate too soon. This guy hasn't shown up yet, right? And then I think that leads us into what we ultimately get in the end scene. All I want to be is with them to a new future, because this is the last time. Once again, constant bringing of that up, not explaining anything in relation or relevance to it for us to understand why, or, you know, clarification as to if he just doesn't want to do this no more, or if he actually doesn't have any other chances after this, why that is the case, if he's just out of different things that he can like kind of allow him to go back. Like, doesn't really explain any of it. Full on setup of a bunch of other stuff here with Jaffe that later turns into like a weird scenario, especially with him being on like the news and stuff and them not really kind of explaining any of that. Cute little moment here as Lu Guang has to watch on and see this, which I don't know exactly what it was, but it's important, the fact that both of them are on here. extended a little bit on the outro too. And then we get end scene, which is just kind of important but laughable at the same time. If we're gonna be completely honest here with him awakening. So yeah, I don't know. I yapped for a long time. I don't know if I said anything of substance for anybody or anyone to kind of grab onto, but it was just it's a weird collective of episodes. It's about 5 that I don't care for. It's about 1 that has relevance and importance going forward that is still kind of weak overall and leaves way more questions than answers. Not that I'm expecting, because I already know that not enough people are going to stick around to this end part that I'm going to get comments on it, because that's typically what happens, where people assume that you want answers to everything without being able to have proper setup and do things along these lines. But the problem is I'm plenty okay with them doing it. I don't think they're doing it in a good way. I just think there's smarter, stronger ways that other series that have demonstrated that for decades up to this point have done. And I just think this season did not accomplish that. So I don't know. Overall, wasn't a fan of it. Didn't love it. Didn't really come out impressed with any of the episodes. I think certain ones were definitely better than others and led me hope to believe that we could get into that state, but we just never hit it at any point. It's pretty underwhelming. It's pretty unfortunate. I don't know if I'm the only one feeling that way. I hope I'm not. If I am, that's not a good thing. But if I'm not, and I'm not the only one here, it's probably better at least to know that I'm not fully alone on this, and some people are seeing similar things as to I am. So that's all I'm gonna really have for right now till season 3. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you liked it all, like and subscribe to me. Feel free to check out the video channel. Leave any comments about this episode of this series. I'll be back in season 3. Lord knows when. You guys have a great one. Peace.